Hello and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I'm Jawad Hami and these are the headlines. Indian occupation forces have martyred two more civilians in occupied Jammu and Kashmir. One of them was killed in the army custody, while the other one was targeted in a search operation in the Baramulla district. The occupied valley has been under New Delhi's crushing curfew and communications blackout for the past 409 days. Iran says the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain will bear consequences of their normalization deals with Israel. In a televised speech, President Hassan Rouhani said Israel has intensified atrocities in Palestine with every passing day. This comes a day after Israel's Prime Minister and Foreign Ministers of Bahrain and the UAE signed the deals to establish ties with Israel. The number of COVID-19 infections in India has surpassed 5 million, the second highest in the world after the US. Nearly 1,300 people have died in the country and more than 90,000 have contracted the virus in the last 24 hours. In Pakistan, 4 people lost their lives to the virus overnight, with the death toll at 6,393. Globally, the COVID-19 has claimed over 933,000 lives while infecting close to 29.5 million. Japan's parliament has elected Yoshihide Suga as the country's new prime minister following the resignation of Shinzo Abe. State media says Suga won a poll for prime minister, bagging 314 votes in the 465-member lower house. Those are the headlines and detailed stories right after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back, and now with the news in detail. We start our news bulletin from Indian occupied Kashmir, where occupation forces have martyred 2 more civilians in Baramulla district. The Indian troops arrested one of the youths during a cordon and search operation in the Sopore area of the district and later killed him in custody. The other youth was martyred during a military crackdown in the Uri area of the district. Authorities have increased the deployment of the troops in the area, fearing demonstrations against the killings. The occupied valley has been under New Delhi's curfew and communications blackout for the past 409 days. The Taliban say an agreement has been reached with Kabul on most of the topics related to the mechanism of starting the sessions. After the second meeting with the Kabul representatives in Doha, Taliban spokesperson Mohammad Naeem said 2 sides have agreed to establish a liaison committee to sort out the differences. Naeem said, however, there are some issues that have not been agreed upon yet. The leaders of both the delegations confirmed the discussion on issues will be held after the mechanism and timetable for the dialogue is agreed. They said the negotiations should be for the solution of Afghanistan's problems and not for the happiness of others. The Taliban said they seek to work with Kabul for the establishment of a truly Islamic Afghan inclusive central system in an independent Afghanistan. Meanwhile, Israel says its warplanes and combat helicopters have bombed the Gaza Strip. The Israeli Defense Forces said the air raids were carried out in retaliation for rockets fired from Gaza Strip into Israeli territory. Israeli military said its fighter planes and choppers hit a number of Hamas targets. The military claimed it destroyed a Hamas weapons and explosive production plant and a military compound in the strikes. No casualties have been reported yet. Palestinians have staged protests against the UAE and Bahrain's normalization deal with Israel. Earlier, Israel's Prime Minister and foreign ministers of the UAE and Bahrain participated in a deal signing ceremony hosted by the White House. More in this report.
Outraged Palestinians rallied outside the UN office in Gaza and occupied West Bank to flee the UAE and Bahrain's normalization of ties with Israel. Chanting slogans and burning banners, the demonstrators said they refused to concede the rights of the Palestinian people. President Mahmoud Abbas said only Israel's withdrawal from occupied territories can bring peace to the Middle East. The disappointed Palestinians saw the move by the two Arab countries as an endorsement of Israel's occupation and operation of Palestinian territories.
For us as a Palestinian, we consider it very deep stabbing in the back of the Palestinians. It is a free offer for the Israelis to continue their occupation for our land and to expansion their settlements and carry on in the process of annexation of many Palestinian lands.
Hamas said the people of the region continue to view Israel as an enemy and accused the two Arab countries of siding with the enemy.
It's a day of rage for the Palestinian people and the Islamic and Arab world, a day of humiliation and insult for the leaders of Bahrain and Emirates who are normalizing with the Zionist occupation.
Meanwhile, US President Donald Trump hailed the dawn of a new Middle East after the three states signed agreements. Trump said he expects Saudi Arabia to be among 7 to 9 other Gulf countries to normalize relations with Israel.
I spoke with the King of Saudi Arabia. At the right time, I do think they will come in. Yes, I do. This is a very big and very historic moment, and I think everyone agrees to that. But we'll have other countries coming in fairly rapidly.
This is the first time Arab nations have established relations with Israel since Egypt in 1979 and Jordan in 1994.
Iran says the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain will bear consequences for their normalization deals with Israel. In a televised speech, President Hassan Rouhani said Israel has intensified atrocities in Palestine with each passing day. The president said this normalization spree will have far-reaching consequences for the region. Rouhani's remarks come a day after Israel's Prime Minister and foreign ministers of Bahrain and the UAE signed deals to establish ties with Israel. Palestinians have also rejected the normalization deals as a betrayal of their cause. Turkey has extended the operations of its Yavuz energy drill ship in the eastern Mediterranean waters. In a maritime notice, the ship has been mandated to continue working in the waters off Cyprus Island until October the 12th. The notice said Yavuz will be accompanied by 3 other Turkish ships. The notice warned all the other vessels are strongly advised not to enter the area. Turkey and Greece have been at odds over the delimitation of their continental shelves and their natural resources. The EU and NATO have asked the two countries to resolve the matter through talks after a recent escalation over the disputed waters. President Volodymyr Zelensky has ruled out holding elections in the conflict-ridden Donbass until Ukraine regains the region. According to Zelensky's office, the president said this to Austria's National Council President Wolfgang Sobotka. Zelensky said election will be impossible in the presence of illegal armed groups and foreign troops in the region. He said Minsk agreement be followed in resolving the Donbass issue. Sobotka said Austria supports settling the eastern Ukrainian conflict through negotiations in the Normandy format. Recently, Kiev has repeatedly called for revisiting the Minsk agreements, especially regarding handing over border control to Ukraine and local elections. Japan's parliament has elected Yoshihide Suga as the country's new prime minister following the resignation of Shinzo Abe. State media says Suga won a poll for prime minister, bagging 314 votes in the 465-member lower house. Japan's Liberal Democratic Party elected Yoshihide Suga as its new leader after Shinzo Abe stepped down over health concerns. The former chief cabinet secretary of Abe, Suga is the son of a farmer and does not belong to any political dynasty. After announcing the members of his cabinet, Suga will be formally inaugurated in a ceremony at the Imperial Palace. The new Prime Minister will hold a press conference later today. China says the World Trade Organization's ruling against the US proves it has been breaking international trade rules. At a press briefing, Foreign Ministry spokesman Wang Wenbin said China hopes the US will respect the ruling. Wang said Beijing expects Washington will take practical actions to maintain the multilateral trading system. US President Donald Trump said he is not a fan of the WTO and he will do something about the organization as it has let China get away with murder. US Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer argued that Washington presented enough evidence of China's intellectual theft. Earlier, the WTO ruled that additional tariffs imposed by Washington against Beijing in 2018 were inconsistent with global trading rules. West African mediators have failed to persuade leaders of the military coup in Mali to immediately hand over power to a civilian government. This comes after the 15-member economic community of the West African states met Mali's military government. Ghana President and acting chair of ECOWAS, Nana Akufo-Addo, said they have not reached any agreement with the military junta. He said a mediating mission will return to Mali next week to try to resolve outstanding issues. Akufo-Addo said Mali needs a civilian leadership and the sanctions will only be lifted afterwards. ECOWAS imposed economic sanctions on military government after the coup on August the 18th. The 75th session of the UN General Assembly has started. The annual high-level session is set to confront some of the most serious threats to humanity, including the pandemic and economic stagnancy. More in this report.
World leaders are set to meet virtually for the first time in the United Nations' 75-year history as the General Assembly kicks off in New York. General Assembly President Volkan Bozkır was sworn in earlier on Tuesday at the closing ceremony of the 74th session of the General Assembly. In his opening remarks, Bozkır asked UN member states to uphold multilateralism.
An honor to declare open the 75th regular session of the General Assembly and call to order its first plenary meeting.
UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres warmly congratulated General Assembly Chair Volkan Bozkır on his new role and pledged his full support. Guterres said the virtual session should be seen as an opportunity and a challenge at the same time.
Virtual participation may mean that a record number of heads of state and government take part in the high-level week, but going online will undoubtedly create new challenges. We will need to learn as we go and continue to demonstrate the greatest flexibility.
The 75th UNGA's high-level general debate will be held on September 22nd. The UN will mark its 75th anniversary with a one-day high-level meeting at the 75th session of the General Assembly on September 21st. The theme for this event will be "The Future We Want, the UN We Need," reaffirming our collective commitment to multilateralism.
More stories to follow, but right after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. The number of COVID-19 infections in India has surpassed 5 million, the second highest in the world after the US. Nearly 1,300 people have died in the country and more than 90,000 have contracted the virus in the last 24 hours. Now, globally, the coronavirus has claimed over 933,000 lives, while infecting close to 29.5 million. Details in this report.
COVID-19 pandemic is devastating healthcare systems as governments scramble to contain the virus. Germany says the coronavirus spike in a Bavarian holiday resort may be lower than feared as they investigate a rise in infections. Local authorities have tracked down more than 30 people they suspect may have been infected from the same source. Meanwhile, Britain's government says it is working hard to fix operational challenges in the testing system caused by a surge in demand.
As we expand capacity further, we're working round the clock to make sure everyone who needs a test can get a test. The vast majority of people who use our testing service get a test that is close to home, and the average distance travelled to a test site is now just 5.8 miles, down from 6.4 miles last week. But the whole House knows that there are operational challenges, and we're working hard to fix them.
The UN says it can hold an in-person meeting of the General Assembly in New York as early as November to discuss the COVID-19 pandemic. World Health Organization says countries should not put children out of school anymore as it is more detrimental for them. It said the decision to close schools should be a last resort, temporary, and only at a local level in areas with intense COVID-19 transmission.
To support countries in every situation, UNESCO, UNICEF and WHO yesterday published updated guidance on school-related public health measures in the context of COVID-19. The guidance provides practical advice for schools in areas with no cases, sporadic cases, clusters of cases, or community transmission.
Australia's Victoria state is on course to relax a strict lockdown by the end of the month after average number of cases over the last 2 weeks dropped below 50. South Korea's new virus cases also stayed below 200 for the 14th consecutive day. China reported 12 new confirmed infections of COVID-19 across the mainland, all of which were imported.
UN humanitarian chief Mark Lowcock has warned specter of famine has returned to war-torn Yemen. He singled out Saudi Arabia, the UAE and Kuwait for giving nothing to this year's $3.4 billion appeal for desperately needed aid. Addressing the Security Council, Lowcock said famine in Yemen was averted 2 years ago because donors met 90% of the UN's funding requirements. He said today the UN appeal has received only 30%, leaving 9 million Yemenis to cope with deepening cuts to aid. The chief said if countries continue to hold back money from the humanitarian response, it will be a death sentence for many families. He once again called on all the donors to pay their pledges now and increase their support. The U.S. National Hurricane Center has warned nearly 10 million Americans to expect life-threatening and historic flooding due to Hurricane Sally. The population along the U.S. Gulf Coast is bracing for impact as the storm continues to gain strength, churning just south of Alabama. Sally has strengthened into a Category 2 hurricane with winds of 170 kilometers per hour. The country's weather agency says the hurricane could dump up to 2.5 feet of rain in some places. The storm's outer bands are lashing parts of the coast, and it could spin off tornadoes as well. After 1971, it is the first time when 5 tropical cyclones are simultaneously churning in the Atlantic right now. U.S. President Donald Trump has declared a federal emergency disaster in Oregon after wildfires ravaged the state. Oregon's Governor Keir Brown appealed for bolstering U.S. government assistance for emergency response and relief efforts. Thousands of evacuees displaced by deadly wildfires in Oregon have been living in shelters and car camping for the second week. Fire crews continue to battle the blaze, and search teams scour the ruins of incinerated homes for the missing. Dozens of fires have charred some 4.5 million acres of lands in Oregon, California and Washington state since August. The wildfires have killed 36 people and continue to ravage several small towns and thousands of homes. The wildfire in Spain's northern region of Galicia has remained active after 12 different blazes in Orense city covered the province in a huge cloud of smoke. The Galicia Region Fire Information Service said 6 of the flames have been controlled, while other 6 are still active. The Spanish military said 121 firefighters and 42 fire engines have been deployed to battle the wildfires. State media reported at least 6,700 hectares have burned. Britain's Prince William and his wife Kate have visited an iconic bagel shop in London and were swiftly put to work. The Duke and Duchess of Cambridge kneaded tray after tray of dough, which is then boiled and baked to make the bagels. William said he had never before tried one of the shop's bagels. The royal's Twitter page said their visit was meant to thank those who have gone above and beyond to help others during the pandemic. Barbados has announced that it will remove Queen Elizabeth as its head of state to become a republic. The country aims to complete the process before the 55th anniversary of independence from Britain in November 2021. Prime Minister MARTYR said it is the time to leave their colonial past behind. The British Foreign Office said the UK and Barbados have an enduring partnership and will continue working together. Turkey has successfully tested its first indigenous flying car, Jazari. In a statement, the manufacturer, BAHRAIN, said Jazari ascended to 10 meters in its 230-kilogram prototype flight tests. Chief Technology Officer Selçuk Bayraktaş said it will take an estimated 10 to 15 years for Jazari to hit the roads. He said the car could be utilized for recreational purposes such as quad bikes in rural areas in next 3 to 4 years. Bayraktaş said the company will make more advanced prototypes in the upcoming process and perform flights with a human on board. The car is named after Ismail al-Jazari, a renowned 12th century Muslim engineer and polymath. Dubai's state-owned DP World says it is partnering with an Israeli group to possibly open a direct shipping line between the two states. The announcement came a day after Israel and the UAE signed an agreement to normalize ties, boost trade and economic collaboration. DP World said it is partnering with an Israeli DOHA Tower group to bid for one of Israel's two main ports. DP World Chairman Sultan Ahmed bin Suleiman said building the trade route will help doing business easily and efficiently. The direct shipping line will be built between the small Red Sea port of Eilat and Dubai's Jebel Ali. Apple has unveiled a new personalized workout subscription service alongside new smartwatches and tablet computers. The new Fitness Plus collects health data gathered by an Apple Watch and then displays it alongside workout videos shown on a larger display. Apple said the platform will compete with existing fitness apps on iOS from Peloton, Les Mills and Fit. It also poses a challenge to Fitbit, whose wearables benefit from their own health coaching subscription service. Apple also introduced a new Apple Watch Series 6 that monitors blood oxygen for $399 and a low-cost Apple Watch SE for $279. Apple's biggest seller, the iPhone, is expected to be announced next month after its launch was delayed by several weeks because of the pandemic. Arsenal captain Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang has signed a new 3-year deal with the club. The 31-year-old striker joined the Gunners in January 2018 and won the Premier League Golden Boot in his first full season. At the first game of the new Premier League season, the Gabon striker scored in Arsenal's victory at Fulham. Meanwhile, Aston Villa captain Jack Grealish has also signed a new 5-year deal with the club. Grealish has been with his hometown club since he was 8 years old, making his debut in 2013. Elsewhere, West Brom have signed former Chelsea defender Branislav Ivanovic on a 1-year deal. And that's all for now. For further updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus News.